growth doesn't come from being comfortable. You have to create uncomfortable moments and find that you can overcome those uncomfortable things to find success.
Welcome back to After the Routine. I'm your host, Rachelle Provost, and I'm here with the 6-time world champion coach and over 10-time podium finisher at the Cheerleading World Championships, Corey Rickett. Corey is the co-owner of Fab Cheer LLC, which specializes in camps, clinics, and choreography, and is the co-owner of HQ Cheer, which provides athlete, coach, and gym owner education. He's a previous coach and director of team success at Cheersport Sharks, a sought-after speaker for conferences across the globe, and was featured as one of the top 40 under 40 in the industry. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Corey.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you're doing about showing athletes and parents that there can be a professional life in this industry and that it's not just going to the gym and doing, being a cheerleader. So I'm so
and
excited.
It definitely doesn't end when you stop being an athlete.
Correct. There's so many things you can do. So I love that.
Okay, well then let's talk a little bit about how did you get into the sport?
That's always a really funny story. So I was a gymnast growing up. I've been in a gym since I was 3 years old, and I was very fortunate. My dad was in the U.S. military, so I traveled a lot, and we ended up in New York at West Point. And at the time, I had just finished training under Bart Connor and Nadia Comaneci in Oklahoma. And they gave me an opportunity to learn to coach. I was 13 years old when this happened. So we move up there. I walk into the gym as a 13-year-old, and literally it was right to the floor learning how to coach. I started coaching rec classes and starting into like their bigger classes by the time I was about 14 years old. Never once did I think cheerleading was going to be a part of my life in any way. And as I entered my 10th grade year in school, I had cheerleaders come into a class that I was coaching, and they found out I went to their school. One of them was very beautiful. It was great, and just very convinced me that I should show up to a practice and, do these kind of things. So I went to a high school practice, and then I went to an all-star practice and fell in love with the all-star feeling. Higher skill on a spring floor and doing those type of things. I ended up at Hawaii Pacific University on a full ride scholarship out there for a while and won many championships out there. We won 10 years straight back in the day, HPU.
Oh my goodness.
And then I ended up being the stunt coordinator at Camp Woodward for a year. I was a coach there. I worked for UCA for a while, and it to me was just fun. Like I was working towards 2 degrees, a biology degree and a psychology degree. So I was like, I'm going to have a great time doing this. I ended up graduating college and wanted to still stay in the sport some way. So I ended up reaching out to a coach that used to go back and forth to Woodward, and I ended up directing at her facility in Pennsylvania. And I was there for only about 6 months, and she ended up selling the gym to somebody else. And then that winter, I went to Cheersport Sharks for the first time as a visiting coach and really loved Canada, loved everything about that program and the country. And that turned into a 10-year engagement. And plus, 10-year plus engagement. And now, looking back, that's where everything, really stemmed from now of what has been created. So yeah, that's kind of like the journey of where it started to where it's gone.
Yeah. And then what about the sport was, you go into that tryout and then you end up spending like the rest of your life pretty much in cheerleading. So what about this sport was like, yeah, I love this. Like, this is something I want to do.
Being in gymnastics, but also having the opportunity as a kid to play so many different sports. I was a multi-sport athlete growing up. Like my dad pushed me into baseball, into hockey, into football, into anything and everything, soccer. And I like to be active. But when I got to that cheerleading environment and people were so encouraging and wanted you to do more and just try the next big thing. The first practice I ever had an all-star, they put me under a stunt and I caught an elbow to the eye and came back with a big old black eye. And I was like, what in the world? This little 80-pound child just gave me a black eye. And it was just like one of those things where it's like, why can't I do this already? Being so athletic and so strong and doing all these different things. That's what kept me in it. That's what kept me wanting to do more.
Yeah, I love that. And I know having, seen different things from you from conferences, I know that you talk about multi-sport athletes. And how important they are to have in the sport. So can you touch on that a little bit?
Of course. I really feel that so many athletes try to find a path and they stay in that path from a young age and they try to become the best they can in one area. But the athletes that I see that end up with the most success in any sport or any part of their life are the ones that really try to manage their time. They've got good, time balance back and forth. Yeah, I have athletes right now that have won world championships with me that are on full ride scholarships to do crew, to row a boat down a river. It's like those things that can be so translatable in so many different ways. But I also think it gives an athlete other standards to look forward to. If I'm only in the gym and I've only got to hit a rewind or I've only got to do a double, but then also outside of the gym, I'm working on, bench pressing or powerlifting or learning how to create more power in a sprint down a track. Those things all intertwine to what makes a really good athlete. Because in cheer, I don't want you to just be a good cheerleader. I want you to be a great athlete. And athleticism is built in every single sport.
I love that so much. Yeah, as someone who has also done a ton of different sports from like horseback riding to sailing to gymnastics, it is one of those things that I do find that I see athletes who also do that are able to understand their bodies better. You're able to say to them like, "Okay, we're going to do this." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, let me go see what that feels like. How do I move that way?" Right? And they're able to coordinate and translate between the sports better.
Right. And I almost feel like it's emotional and mental coping at the same time. When the sport gets hard and we get to a heavy part of our season, if those athletes have managed time or done certain things in a certain way, I feel like they're able to mentally and emotionally cope with the stressors involved outside of an athlete who is so single lane focused of like, this has to be like this. If it doesn't go like this, it's going to be a bad season. Where the other athletes are like, let's practice like next day, keep moving forward. So it gives them a good balance.
We also just talked about this in the last episode, but the idea of grief. And when you leave a sport and that sport is, the whole part of your life and like all your goals and accomplishments have been tied to that, being able to have other things outside of that sport also allows you to have not an easier transition, but it allows you to access other things while you're in that transition.
It's so true. And just knowing that cheer for many athletes starting, let's say at 8 years old and below, all the way through some open athletes who are in there from, their early 30s and beyond. Like I've had opportunities coaching prosecution lawyers in non-tumble. They were just on my
Yep.
non-tumble team. And it is a great part of our lives and something that, we can always look back at and say, like, I loved what I did, or I love the culture of my program where I was. But knowing that what it instilled in you, you can take that and still put that somewhere else and still have a portion of that with you as you move forward. And it's not
Yeah.
always lifting somebody up or flipping your body over, but it's still hosting that feeling that you had in that next big facet of your life.
Yeah, you're speaking about the lore. I'm like, yeah, when you think about going on a stage and you're in front of how many people are watching you and how many people are judging you, and to go then into a courtroom and be like, yeah, okay, I got this. Like so
Right.
translatable.
It's crazy. And like that athlete always sticks out to me because she is the sweetest, kindest athlete I've ever coached. And she just has a poise about her that always drew you in. That she was just that incredible. And like you said, it's so translatable. She literally sits as a prosecution lawyer. And she comes into the gym and I'm coaching her as an athlete to, do a rewind and be on a world stage. It just to this day blows my mind.
Yeah. Now, with all the things you have done, you were, a director of team success. You've been a collegiate athlete. You've done all this. At what point were you like, okay, I'm going to go start my own company and I'm going to start Fab Cheer and we're going to do camps and clinics and choreography?
It was a scary step. It was a very scary step to take that next big move towards creating something myself. Being under Cheer Sport Sharks was incredible. And I love Allie and Land to death. And they gave me such a big stage to do great things. And I'm forever grateful for that. And then on top of that, I was able to work with great people, Kenny and Lisa, who own Spring CDT, who allowed me to travel across the world and to be open to learning different areas across the world and where their sport is and what the political side is behind cheerleading and see that area and see that growth. And I had my first daughter almost 4 years ago now, and once she was born, we had a thought of like, "Hey, we're probably gonna end up moving back to the States to being closer to family.
Yeah.
What's the next big step?" And it was actually Lisa who was the one that said, Corey, you've been under Spring for so long. You've done so many incredible things with our company from, being able to go over and choreograph Team Germany on the ICU side and winning a silver and bronze to winning so many things in Sharks, to traveling the world speaking at conferences at the time. She said, it's no longer their time to help me grow a platform, but it's my time to shine and to give out what I can fully give myself to the industry. And it was great having, mentors like that were able to open the door and not just, chain me up and say, this is where we want you to stay.
Yeah. And then why did you choose choreography in camps and clinics to focus on?
So I started in the camps and clinics area first as just, going into what my knowledge base was. On the gymnastic side and tumbling end, that has been my lifestyle forever. And then coaching great whites and being under Kenny Feely for a long time, it instilled this stunting passion in me from stunts and pyramids, and then having, Lisa and all these other influences and voices in my life that wanted to help me build the overall look of a routine and not just putting skills together. Your routine should tell a story in those manners. You watch a pyramid. I'm going to bring up senior elite. You watch a senior elite pyramid, and those pyramids tell a story. They pull you in. There's action, there's drama, there's pictures that make you fall in love with what they did. And then there's a little bit like, God, I wish I could see more of this. I want more. What's the second book? When's the sequel come out? It pulls you into that. And when I left Sharks and came back to the States and started setting these things up, I was like, you know what? We're going to rely on the tumbling side. I've been speaking at conferences forever. This is going to be a great start. But those clients knew that I did stunts. And that ended up being like, hey, can you come here for stunts and pyramids? And then we'll still use you for tumbling, but just in a small capacity. And
Yeah.
then from there, those stunt and pyramid clients at the end of the season were like, could you do routine cleanup? I was like, of course I can do routine cleanup. It's not the first thing I would jump at, but I would love to help.
Yeah.
And as I started doing more and more of those on the road, that now turned into choreography and being able to do full routines well. And I always joke because we've got a client out in Australia now who their program has been very successful now for multiple seasons. And it's amazing to watch, the growth of those teams and things like that. And heck, teams that we have, all over the US and Canada as well doing really, really big things. So
Yeah.
it's been fun. Yeah. You rely on what you're good at first. And then as a door opens, you never close that door. Take a jump, take a leap of faith. And if it works, great. If not, we're going to figure out the next big solution. And if I can't do it, I always say I will find somebody that can and fit the program so well that you feel like they just belong.
I love that so much. Yeah, I do feel like when working with choreographers, when you can have that relationship and you click, it's such a huge difference in like how those camps run and also like how your routine advances throughout the season. And then also wanting to bring that choreographer back because when you don't have a good experience in that moment, you're like, I will never use them again. Like,
Right. And I think for a lot of people, it's just knowing, one, what you enjoy and what you like to do, but also putting your pride aside and saying, look, this isn't my specialty. It's not my forte. It's not something I'm great at, but I guarantee you, I know somebody that could help you and do the things that you want to do. And I'm always that person. If I can't do it, if I'm in the moment, I'm like, hey, this is not going to be great, but let me get somebody in here for you that can make it great, that can make it something that you're proud of. And it's just putting that pride aside. It's they always say you can be a jack of all trades, but nobody says the rest of it. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Like
mhm.
I want to help, and I know I'm great at tumbling. I know I'm phenomenal at stunts, and I'm great at choreography. But it wouldn't be the first hat that I always put on.
Yeah.
Yep,
And then
fair.
for athletes and coaches and even gym owners who are looking at kind of creating this network of people and like you said like mentors and kind of like I always call it like a pocketbook or like a phone book of like the people that you can call and rely on. So for you, what has been the ways that you have really helped grow that phone book of people that you know?
Putting myself out there, going to introduce myself to people, shaking people's hands, telling them the athletes that I see, maybe they coach, the attributes that I really enjoy seeing in them, and just always putting myself in situations to meet those people. And I feel like so many times coaches or athletes or other people might look at a coach at another program or another gym and say, they're so big, they'll never talk to me. They do so many great things, and I'm just, a nobody. We're all humans. We're all people who do the same thing. Whether we coach, on a teal floor to a red floor to a black and gold floor to a blue floor, it does not matter. We all do the same things and we share the same passions. And I think being able to open that line of conversation is super important. I currently, even for the tumbling side in our industry, I'm in a group of great coaches we call the Avengers, as funny as it is.
I
But
love
it
that.
is like it's so fun. Jason Larkins actually was the one that helped start their group, but it's like Jason Larkins in there, myself, Romello Suna, Casey Ballou. We've got Sean Guzman, Callie Seitzer, Matt Kelly, Derek, or we call him Twist. We've
Yep.
got Jimbo, we've got Roman and Shay Crawford. Believe that's everybody in our group. And that is like even being a great tumbling coach and being in a chat of great tumbling coaches, we ask each other daily, hey, what is going on with this skill? Or what do you think about this drill? Or what do you think about these rules? What do you think about the score sheet? What can we do to make this better? We host those own conversations within our group to see what these people think who are considered industry leaders. And it's neat to get perspective because we all have created great athletes, but we all have a different thought or a different process of how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you say that about the floor colors because when I'm backstage with my teams, a lot of times I tell them, I'm like, same routine, different mat. That's the only difference when it comes to in the gym versus on a competition floor. It is literally just the same music, same routine, same choreo, same coaches. You're just on a different floor. And I think that also applies to what you said that it is the same sport. We all just might wear a different color, right? And so like you're passionate about cheer, they're just as passionate about cheer. So like go introduce yourself, say hi. Maybe if like you saw like their routine or something that they're coaching, like say like, hey, I loved this when I saw your junior four or whatever, right? Because then you can start that conversation. It gives you a talking point. But I also think that is applicable as well. I know younger coaches tend to get really nervous when they go to conferences. And as someone
Hmm.
who has also been a speaker, I'm like, come ask me questions. Like, I want to be a resource and I
Right.
love talking to people. And so, for when people go to conferences, because we're getting into that season, are there any tips that you have for people who want to go up and, maybe talk during a session or talk to a speaker afterwards?
When you are at a conference or you're a young coach and you're looking to speak to somebody, especially about, what they might have talked on or maybe what they haven't talked on, don't be afraid to like get them in between a class, get them after a session. Heck, I guarantee you the question that you have in your head is something that 10 other people in that classroom need to hear as well. And it's great to say, hey, putting yourself out there, asking a question, you never look stupid asking a question. You're there to get the knowledge that you want in that moment. And I always say it's the same thing to the young coaches that have choreographers come in and work with their teams. They're terrified to speak to a choreographer sometimes. You have to speak up and tell them what you want. Like if I go somewhere and I'm buying a shirt, but I see a defect in that shirt, girl, I ain't buying that shirt. We're putting it back and we're getting a different one. It's
Yeah.
going to be just as good. It's going to be, hopefully it's the same size, but we're going to make it work. And the same thing happens at conferences where people get so nervous to say things that they don't put themselves up front to do that. And then it translates hard for them, or they hear it in a way that might not as be impactful. I know like Gen A's and Gen Z's, they don't like to single themselves out. They like to be more a part of a crowd. But asking a question is not singling you out. It's going to assist you in being the best person you can be.
I totally agree. And I also think that person has agreed to be a resource. So, like, try and get as much information that you can from them, right? Like, I know that I talk a lot about marketing, but like I want to have those conversations. So like you said, like grab them after a session. There's usually a lunch break depending on where it is, and then they're just kind of hanging out. They might not have a session back to back, so they might have like an hour that's free or so. And for so many speakers, they're willing to say like, yeah, okay, like let's have this. Or for a lot of people, they're like, hey, message me on Instagram, send me an email, and like let's have this conversation more. which then helps you add on to that phone book like we talked about.
Exactly. Like even myself this summer through early fall, I'm speaking at, I think, 5 to 6 different conferences. And I always tell my attendees, look, I'm available to you 24/7. I was on the road last year over 280 days. I am traveling, traveling, traveling. And anytime you message me, even if it's not right away when I get back to you, I promise I will always get back to you because that's what it should be. We're a community. And the only way that we can be a great community is to rely on and to lean on other people in our sport to help us. And we put up those barriers, that's when our community fails. And that's when our sport will hit a wall and no longer move forward into, the next era of what our sport can be. But now we take steps backwards, and that's not what we want.
Totally agree. Yeah, I know whenever I fly, I have a free Facebook group that I have for gym owners and dance studio owners. And I'll put in it, I'm like, I'm flying today. I want to give you feedback, like comment your Facebook post, comment your ad, comment your flyer. And then I'll just go through and then comment on it. Cause I'm like, I'm not doing much else on the plane. So I might as
Oh
well
my gosh,
help
I love
another
that.
person.
Right. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's so fun.
Yeah. Now you talked about Fab Cheer. And so you talked about having this big shift into owning your company. Then you decided to open a second company. So can you
I
talk about
did.
like what that is and how that came to be?
So we are now in the beta phases, which is really fun, of a company called HQ Cheer. And what HQ Cheer is it is a online learning resource platform for athletes, parents, coaches, gym owners, where it'll be coaches and some of the best coaches in our industry helping coach coaches as well helping assist athletes to being the best athletes they physically can be. So in there we do monthly lives. Every single month, there's going to be a different live. And this might be somebody in our industry. It might be a personal trainer. It might be a dietitian. It might be a sports optometrist. It could be anything, mental training to you name it. It is going to be hosted on there. Every single month as a coach, you're going to get access to drills, but not just like drills that you see on Instagram and YouTube and all these crazy things. It's going to be directed. It's going to be in a way where this drill relies on this drill being done well, and this skill being performed correctly. And it's basically like, in my mind, coaches making coaches great, as well as helping those athletes learn the proper progression steps to be a great athlete. This will allow parents to make an informed, educated decision on how their athletes are doing as well in the gym. So how many times does a coach say, hey, your athlete's not ready to do a back handspring? And that parent is like, she should do a back handspring. That's what she wants to work towards. This is going to give parents what those athletes should be doing at home, from exercises to flexibility, safe style drills, things like that. And it's going to give them milestones so they know their athlete is ready to do a skill in a gym. For a gym owner, we're going to be putting collective coaches within their app as well in their portfolio so they can see what the coaches are doing in the gym. They're also going to be able to test the coaches on their knowledge. And this won't be rules or those kind of based exams. It's going to be I don't want to call it a competency exam, but it's going to be like a qualification system where it goes from mechanics to body parts to safety to teaching a skill correctly from step A to step Z. And that's going to go from tumbling to stunting to laying out routines to all of the above. So we're going to hopefully be creating some really, really big things here. And I'm so excited. We've got some great coaches that are partnering on with us to help create different things. Our goal is within the next like 2 to 3 months to have a true launch out of our beta. And then from there, every month, adding anywhere from 50 to 100 drills and videos on top of our lives, on top of our skill worksheets, on top of everything that we're doing, which is, there's a lot. It's been a big undertaking. So we're so excited to get it out.
That's amazing. And then what sparked that idea for you? What were you like, okay, yeah, this is something I want to do?
So it was actually an old teammate of mine from college. He, for years, even when I worked at Cheer Sport Shark, said, Corey, you speak all over the world. You work with some of the best teams in the industry, and they want you back every season. And what you're doing works. And why don't you put this out? Initially, it was like, why don't you put this out on YouTube? Let's make this something on YouTube. And in my mind, I was like, It's just YouTube. To me, it's the social media trends that I see in the industry now, where everybody posts everything and it's become copy and paste. Coaches see something, they copy it, they paste it, and they hope for the best. And there's no direction. There's no what, why, when, where, how, what are the implications? And I said, if I'm going to do this, we need to make this something bigger than just YouTube. I want direction. I want to make sure we make a change in coaches, not just a video library. So he's been a big, big supporter in this and helping me through this. He's also one of the co-owners. My wife, who also helps run Fab Cheer, she's one of the co-owners as well. And then I think we currently have 10 to about 10 people, I think, under us as well that are working, whether in our web development to skill videos. And there's a few other things coming down the pipe that I can't quite share right now, but I will say once released, will not only shake the industry pretty hard, and I think a
Okay.
good way, but will also help alleviate a lot of issues for gym owners finding different competitions to go to,
Yeah.
but also creating your teams in a different way for success. So this is something
Okay.
that we know has never been done in the industry. There's not been any thought to this, but we've partnered with some very amazing people that are running different things that have never been thought of in our sport to make these things happen. And it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty cool when it comes out. I just can't say too much
Okay.
now on it. So yeah, it leaves a little air of mystery in there.
Sounds like we're gonna have to have you back on when that gets launched.
Man, I would love to because it's gonna be pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So then with all of that, so it's all about educating athletes and coaches and parents and gym owners. So with that in mind, what is, maybe one or two things that you'd love for more people to know about? Whether that be mental performance or skill based or drill based or just as a whole for creating success.
I think there's two things for me. One is the awareness that physical and mental are one stream that coaches train quite a bit and athletes focus on, but emotional fortitude and emotional strength is something completely different. And I think learning now how to handle emotions in our industry is really important from the front of the floor to an athlete that's on the floor, and even parents and how they approach different coaches and gym owners. I think that's a big thing. I'm a very big person in our industry that I'm very much against fear-based coaching, and I've never once yelled at an athlete or been that kind of a person. It's just not in my DNA. Yeah, I guarantee you we're going to get the best physical results out of a team, out of an athlete, and create success. So I think emotional knowledge is just important as physical and mental knowledge. So that's number one. The second is, what are the true foundations of everything you're doing? From, what does it take to get a good, I'm going to use the back handspring again, but truly what does it take to have a great back handspring? And as a coach, are you coaching everything in a way that creates success, or are you coaching it in a way that creates problems and now you become a fixer? I want to see coaches. I don't want to see fixers on the floor. So that, is a big piece of that. And I think just understanding the foundations and the right knowledge behind every skill you're doing to make sure that we're having good success, we're having safe athletes on the floor, and we're creating success in our programs,
Yeah. And then to go off of that, in your
right?
opinion, what makes a good coach?
I think what truly makes a great coach, in my opinion, is one that can celebrate successes in small pieces. It doesn't have to be a big scale. It doesn't have to be a competition win. A person that said something to me once that has always stuck with me was Orby from California All Stars. The first year I coached Great Whites, we had a phenomenal season and we fell in finals at Worlds and lost. We ended up in second. And I'll never forget to this day, Orby walking over to me and he says, "What defines you and defines this team? Is it one competition or is it your season? Is it everything you were able to give with them on and off the floor that they're going to remember and that they're going to enjoy? Or is it this one competition and one moment that's going to define you and define this team?" And ever since then, it's completely changed my mentality. So I believe a great coach connects with their athletes. They find the joy in what they're doing, even on the hard days and bad days. They never host their own emotions and take it out on their kids and what they're doing on the floor. But at the same time, they're okay to change things up and define new directions to build success instead of sticking to a traditional formula year after year after year. So just evolving with what's in front of you.
Yeah, totally agree. And then from the other side of it, what would you consider to be a good athlete?
Coachability, period. Coachability and just maintaining your own fun personality. I truly think there's four kinds of athletes that are on the floor every day. There is a participant who just showing up and like being on the floor, that's their gold star. It's like, hey, Coco, I made it. I'm like, you did. That's it. That's all I can ask of you. And that they get so excited just for showing up. So you've got a participant, you've got a competitor who wants to come in, who wants to work out, who will do what you tell them that day on the floor, and that's it. And that's okay. They're not going to stretch more. They're not going to work out more. What you get that day is what you get. The next kind of athlete on the floor is a contender. They're the ones that want to be top one, two, or three. They work a little bit harder. They stretch outside the gym. They work out. They might focus on things that they eat here and there to know that if I have this before practice, it's going to be a really bad day. Or if I eat this, it's going to be a great day. Those athletes are fun and they push the team in a competitive manner. And then you have champions. Champions are those athletes on the floor that eat, sleep, breathe, drink cheerleading. They're the ones that come up to the coach with 10,000 ideas. Before you even get there, they're like, hey, we could do this out of our stunt. If we change our tumbling like this, it would look cool. They are my champion kids. And really on the floor, you've got all four of those athletes that make up a team. And I think showing up outside of those attributes, being coachable, keeping your own personality and being a great teammate and how you communicate with not just voice but body language is very important, and opening yourself up to try things. Growth doesn't come from being comfortable. You have to create uncomfortable moments and find that you can overcome those uncomfortable things to find success, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that one of the biggest things, like we've talked about, is the transferable skills, right? You talk about being coachable, you talk about being willing to try new things, being a good teammate, right? Being, reliable as a teammate as well. Those are all things that if you go to school and you're in a group project, like you have to be able to try new things. You have to be able to help your teammates and, go through there. And then when you go into the workforce, the same thing, right? Like you have teams that
Right?
rely on you and deadlines and the ability to handle multiple things at once. Like, hey, you're going to do stunts, then you're going to go to tumbling, then you're going to go to pyramid, and then you're going to go to dance.
Right. No, exactly. And being able to like manage those things. Like I know like Gen Z, Gen A's are really schedule based. And when a coach throws out a curveball and says, hey, you know what? We can't move on to our running tumbling section today. We've got to spend more time at stunts. Or, today's going to be more about doing full outs and then clean up at the end. Managing that, even though it's outside of our norm, you're still going to be successful. You're still going to be great. And that taking it, 10 to 15 minutes at a time is what's important.
Yeah. And then with that being said, we're starting into a new season. What are some tips that you can give coaches and gym owners that they can use to set their teams up for success from the beginning of the year?
First would be dynamics. Make sure that the athletes that you're choosing don't just have the skill set for the team, but have the mental and emotional capacity for a team. Like an athlete that might be on the cusp of a junior and senior team. They might have the skills for that senior team, but are they mentally and emotionally ready to be with senior athletes? Or do we need them to be more seasoned on a junior team and create the maturity there and become a leader before we move them forward? So for gym owners and coaches, that's got to be a really, really big focus. Is it's not always about the skill. It's still about the dynamic of what that kid's going to offer once they get placed into a role on your team. The next thing for an athlete would be, and I hate the term in our industry, trust the process, because I feel like sometimes they use that term and we've lost what is the actual process? Where are we going? But I want you to come into a gym every day with an open mind, knowing that when you walk through that door, you're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. You never stay the same. And it is up to you where you go, whether you put in the extra work and you listen to your coaches to know that they're going to help you get to that next step, or to mentally shut off yourself and take steps backwards. So even though if you're like, hey, I, had a tuck or I have multiple handsprings and I want to move towards level 3, but I'm on a level 2 team, what can you do on that level 2 team that will make you the best athlete on that level 3 team? Can you perfect your jumps? Can you hit the hardest stunts in level 2 they physically put out in front of you? Can you throw a tumbling pass every time that is, I call it sellable, where I can sell it to a judge and they're going to want to buy that skill right at the beginning? Be that athlete, be that person that can be just in more one role focused.
Yeah. I love that. And I also think that applies too when you go into a practice and they're like, hey, I'm going to have you try a different position, right? Being open to be like, okay, yeah, let me try this. Let me go in this spot because you may even find that it's one thing that you really enjoy or that you're really good at.
Right. And I mean, let's talk about, real world applications from that. Sometimes you get hired for a role and it's just one faceted. You're going in, I'm only going to handle this. And once they see that you might be really good at that role, they might ask you to try something new and try something different in that company or organization that you might have had no experience with. And what you're relying is your own knowledge of what you've understood in your role, but also outside of that. And you're manipulating ideas and doing these things. I always joke because some of the highest companies in the world, Fortune 500 companies, are run, their CEOs, their presidents, by arts and theater majors.
Yep.
These people look at things in a different way than somebody with just a business degree. They use ways that other people would be like, there is no way this is going to work. This marketing sounds crazy, but it's so catchy. It's so vibrant. It's so exciting and it brings you in. And I think being able to know that when you have change and you're doing things that aren't in your wheelhouse, you can be successful. And it might not be the same way that everybody does it. And that's okay. Do it your way and let the success roll forward. If you know you can get there a certain way, attempt it, do it. You can do big things.
Yeah. And I also think that when it comes to, like you mentioned about, those music and theater majors, a lot of CEOs, it's about people, right? And when we
Yes.
had talked about earlier, tone of voice, body language, those things all play into how you interact with people. And that stems from you're on a team and you are maybe frustrated with the person in your stunt group, but you need to look at how you're approaching it. How are you talking to your teammates? Are you there like super closed off, arms crossed, like I'm not going to talk to you? Or are you open and willing to have conversations?
I used to always joke and call it the persuasion arts when I got into like professional scopes because you can learn to manipulate your body language and how you actually feel about a situation to make other people believe it that it could be a positive way to make them want to work for you in a better way. If you turn them off right away where they don't want to work for you because you are so closed and have an angry expression, but you're like in the back of your mind, like, gosh, they're terrible. I hated that. But you're like, it was so good. I see what you were trying to do here, but I think we can make this better. They're like, "Oh, I'm happy you enjoyed that. What would you suggest?" It's getting what I want, but allowing them to know that their input will be beneficial to me. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what you gave me at first was not what I wanted. That was it was something that we need to change. But if I were to say it was absolutely terrible, I don't know why you did this. Like, why are we even trying? They're never going to want to try. They're never going to want to do those things. So it just gives them a different role and opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And I think that attitude perspective, same thing, whether you're going into a skill or you're going into a high school class or you're going into a workplace, when you look at something, you're like, oh, that's not going to work. Right. And you're saying that. Right. And we have how many times of maybe as a coach, you've heard an athlete go, that's not going to work. I don't like how that it is. Right. And then you're like, no, like trust what we're going to do. We're going to, build up. We're going to go through the skills. We're going to go through drills and then it works. Right. And so the athletes who are willing to try it and willing to be like, okay, yeah, it might not work on the first time, but we're going to put that work in to develop that skill are going to be more successful in the end because they have that mindset and that attitude.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Again, emotional and attitude training. That's it. As soon as you can regulate your emotions and create the attitude that you want, the mental and the physical come together.
Yeah. And then like we said, we're heading into competition season. And so for athletes who are, starting to maybe become junior coaches, coaches in training, coaches are starting to be like, yeah, okay, I actually want to spend a little bit more time than maybe coaching one team or one class. or they're at the point where they're like, yeah, I want to make this my career. What are some things that you
right?
can recommend to them to develop their craft?
So, first, I'm always going to tell you that no matter what you see in the gym is going to be good. And it might be something that you see that you don't agree with, but you need to learn why you don't agree with that. And learning what you did as an athlete and being able to implement that into the next generation is important, but also knowing what you know didn't might work for you and how you think you could change that to make that next generation better. And that's a big reason why I still coach to this day is I had injuries and things myself as an athlete. And I was put in situations and positions that allowed me to gain so much knowledge where I want to pass that on to the next generation of coaches and the next generation and the next generation. So I know those athletes are going to be safer. So I know those athletes don't have to go through the same pains that I have every morning when I wake up. And I think that's really important. I will tell you once HQ Cheer gets launched, it would be a massive resource for you to be able to go on and see. And I do want to say with that, and something I didn't share earlier, we are not looking at normal kind of price points for that with people. Again, I'm not doing this to make profits like that. I want people to get the knowledge. So for an athlete, we're going to be in probably the $10 range a month for the premium side of everything. For a coach, we're looking at something like around $20 a month, just so it's cheap, it's affordable, where you can get the education that you need to do those things. I don't need you spending hundreds and thousands of dollars. I want you to feel competent and comfortable with what you do. I also want to tell, the junior coaches that are out there, Instagram and YouTube are great to a degree. You need to look at it, break it down, and understand why, when, where, how, and what the implications are of the drill. And are there any safety concerns of what you are doing? Be aware of those instead of just looking at it and be like, I saw this on Instagram, I'm going to try it. Don't just jump the gun. I promise it will make your life a lot easier if you start to understand the why.
Yeah. So being able to look at those resources and tools that you have available, utilize them, and then not just looking at a skill or a drill and being like, yeah, that's everything, but being able to break down each part of that and see, like you said, like what's the purpose? Why is it there? What can we do to make sure that athletes are protected and safe? What are we making sure that the coach is also safe? And then going forward and setting a plan for that.
Exactly. 100%, Rochelle. You're dead on.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit of a shift, but if you weren't doing your current role, what other role in cheerleading or youth sports would you want to do?
Ooh, that's such a fun question. I think if I was not in the current role that I'm in and what I'm doing, I honestly would want to be in a position to help athletes on a rehabilitation side of things.
Yes.
I would want to look at whether it be a mental or a physical style of injury and how do we get an athlete back to competing at their optimal state. And to be honest and fair, outside of like a physical therapist, there's not really a role I think in our industry that hosts those things too much. But really this could go into a, sports performance psychologist that specializes only in a role of this for an athlete or a role that allows you to see an athlete in prime form and knowing what the steps are, not on a coaching side, but on a biomechanical side. What can I do to help an athlete get to that next big step? So I think it's weird. I think that's a fun, faceted question because I think the role of which I'd want to go into, I don't know really truly exists in our industry yet. And that could be something that would be, now at my age, looking at the next generation to produce and to put into a program. So
I love
yeah,
that. That would be so fun. Yeah. And I think, like you said, like it's not there yet, right? But there is the opportunity. And especially as we are developing more national programs and we're looking at going into the Olympics, that is a role that we're going to need quite a bit.
right. I mean, heck, if it wasn't that, I'd probably want to look at being like a GM for cheerleading, which doesn't exist either.
Yeah.
GM where I'm looking at the best talent in the industry in the world and being able to get those athletes into one program, into one team, and what's the ways that I can do that. So I think that would be another role that I would enjoy so much. I love those kind of things in other sports.
What a fun take. My last question is I like to ask it to every single guest that we have on, which is if you were to think back to that like grade 10, you're going to your tryout, it's like your first kind of experience into cheerleading, and you think about all of the things that you've done to today. What do you wish that someone would have told you to help you pursue this career?
I think being a male in the industry and starting it later, that what you're doing in this sport is one gonna be okay. It's not, hearing those names and being, bullied through those things when you're younger, that's gonna be okay. And what you have in your past and what you will learn will not just help you, but help so many other athletes across the world. It's worth it. It's worth it. And just to stick to it and that other people's perceptions in what you do don't need to be a part of your mental state moving forward. That you can do big things even if people don't believe that you will.
I think that is so applicable for everyone, right? Like keep doing what you're doing and follow your passions. Yes, there's going to be people that have things to say and maybe they're not going to be positive things, but there is a whole host of people that are willing to help you get there.
Right. Yes, most definitely.
Well, I am so excited to share this episode with everyone. I think that they're going to get so much information and little tidbits that they can take with them. And I cannot wait for people to hear more about HQ Cheer and all the things that you're going to tackle. And then when you launch your new stuff, we're going to have you come back on because I can't wait to hear about how
Yes.
you're going to shake everything up.
Oh, it's going to be big. It's going to be big, big. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Corey, today.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. And again, coaches or anybody out there, please feel free to follow us on Instagram to always know what's coming up. My personal one is at Shark Coco, where we post a lot of the trainings and things that we're doing and camps and clinics all over the world. Fab Cheer LLC, and then also our HQ one now, which is wild. I have 3 Instagrams. It's HQ Cheer Official. So please, please, please head on there and follow along.
Yeah, we'll make sure to tag them into all of the posts and everything so that people can go check it out. But other than that, make sure to tune back in 2 weeks where we're going to be talking to another guest and answering the question, what happens after the routine ends?